Hello, Year 11. Today we're going to be doing some Theme E revision because we didn't get a chance to do Theme E in class. And I'm playing a game called The Sims. My children have helped, well, my son, oldest son, has helped me design my man, and I look excellent. I'm very pleased with him. He's me, but a bit more handsome. And we're going to be a policeman in it because Theme E is the police section. So I'm a detective and I have to go to work in 24 hours. And while we wait for him to go to work, it won't take 24 hours, we're going to go over some Theme E revision notes. Oh, there's music playing. Go and turn off the music. Thank you. So, Theme E, it's the crime section. So, I, I think the crime section can be a little tricky in that there's a lot of learning for it. Okay, he's just sitting there like paralysed. Um, there's a lot of things to learn for it, and a lot of lists of things, but a lot of those lists are quite common sense. And as long as you've got the basic words, I think you should be alright with it. The first list we'll go over quickly is the reasons for crime section. So, what is he doing? Okay. The reasons for crime is like the reasons why people commit crime in the first place. So what we're talking about there is things like poverty, upbringing, mental illness, addiction, greed, hate, and opposition to an unjust law, which is the strange one in the example bringing, which we'll go over in maybe a bit more detail. So let's go through in order, okay? And then we'll try and talk briefly about like the Christian response to it. So that would be useful for like a 4 or 5 marker. They can be quite tricky and be like, oh, explain 2 ways a Christian might treat someone who's committed a crime. Why are you reading again? I do love reading, but okay, you're just going to read books until your job comes. Okay, so 23 hours. Let's make that go a bit faster. So, firstly, poverty. Turn the radio off. It's annoying, I'm teaching. So, poverty is obviously when people commit crimes because they don't have enough money in order to fund the lifestyle they want or in order to afford the basics in life. That's the most important thing about that one. For Christians, there would be a couple of things. You could be like the... Oh my lord, I'm going to go away from this house. Oh, it's just raining there. For Christians, there'd be like, firstly, there should be anyone going hungry. There should be poverty because people should be donating to charity. So they should have sympathy for those in poverty. Love thy neighbour. I don't know why it made that noise. I don't know what a welcome wagon is. Okay. So, oh, there's loads of people at this house. I don't know. I'll ignore them. So, it's making noise. Stop. Go away. So, I don't know how to get away from this. Right, we'll just focus on the quiet bedroom. It's raining in the house now. Okay, that's worrying. So, if I don't want poverty to exist, I've got to give to charity in the first place, okay? So I should be giving to charity in the first place. Also, love of money is the root of all evil, so people shouldn't be greedy, so people should give their money away. People should be more generous with their money. But you could go Islam on this and be like, cut the hands of thieves, you can be stealing food, okay? Then you could do the parable of the sheep and goats. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. This person should not have to steal. Other Christians should have given them money already. So people who commit crimes because of poverty, you might say should be treated with forgiveness because of that reason. What about upbringing? Well, you want to focus on things you probably said in Theme A about the role of parents, okay? Spare the rod, spoil the child is the quote from this section we're going to use, but it could be about raising children in that sense. And that children should be taught, thou shalt not steal. So you could be like, oh, if the upbringing wasn't in a Christian sense, then they would not be raised right. So maybe they need to be educated on Christian rules of behaviour, which obviously is an interesting point to make in the big scheme of society, much more complicated, but for our point, absolutely fine. Mental illness is a really, really tricky one because there's nothing in the Bible that speaks specifically about how Christians should treat people because of mental illness. Is there any way of me just destroying that? Put in the inventory. Does that mean just get rid of it? Good. Mr. Minton is a goofball. Goofballs are often playful. Great. Why is a game calling me a goofball? Just trying to live my life. So there's nothing really in the Bible about mental illness specifically in that sense. They talk about people suffering with demons and all that. But what I'll be talking about is how it's a disease and diseases should be healed. So the person should be treated with love, and I'm playing a guitar. I'm determined to make as much music in the game as possible so I can't concentrate. It's great. So the most loving and passionate thing to do would be to treat that person with love. Love thy neighbour, treat other people as you wish to be treated. Those are the quotes I'll be going for. So I'm just going to have some water because already I'm losing my temper with this game. Addiction. Once again, you could be talking. Mr. Minton was wondering, should he like guitar? Yeah, all right, I'm playing a guitar. That's fine. And then I just read books. I'm such a nerd. Oh no, I'm putting books back now. And now I'm going to the toilet. Right, well, we won't watch that. Disgusting. So, addiction, you'd be talking about the fact that Christians shouldn't have done illegal drugs in the first place because it clouds the mind. You're talking Islam, how Muslims are not allowed to do anything that clouds the mind and makes them make poor decisions. That is why alcohol is forbidden in Islam. Because it makes people make unwise decisions. So you should avoid those things in the first place because it'll make them stray from the true path. So that's what I'd be focusing on there, that the use of drugs themselves was forbidden so people didn't make poor decisions, but then also doing the same, love their neighbour, treat the people as you wish to be treated. Now greed always argues a bad reason to commit crime. The love of money is the root of all evil. Greed is a sin. It is one of the 7 deadly sins. 7 deadly sins not in the Bible though, they're just Catholic law. Christians believe in them sort of en masse, but there's nothing in the Bible that says there's nothing in the Bible that says 7 deadly sins at any point, but you could link it to the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbour. No, covetousness. You should not want things that are not yours. That's sort of a link to greed. But the love of money is the root of all evil. Greed would be the one where you'd say that almost there should be no sympathy in that sense. Whereas the others, it should be a bit more about forgiveness. Greed, it's easier to argue that you should be sympathetic with those who are greedy. I'm now playing on my phone. Now I'm watching TV, which is a very realistic version of my life. Hate. Any hate crimes, just in case people aren't sure what a hate crime is, are crimes committed because of hatred towards a person for who they are and how they're born, for example, because of their race, their sexuality, or their gender. I hope you all knew that already. So you'd be doing a love thy neighbour, you'd be doing treat other people who should be treated as your basic answers. Then I wouldn't mind to see like we are all one in Christ Jesus. God created man in his image. From the Quran, that Adam was made of 7 different colours of earth, so he's the father of all races. Like those are things that I'd be expected to do. Okay, I'm watching the weather forecast. Babes, it's raining. You don't need to know what the weather is. I'm going to work in 12 hours. Okay, excellent. I'll be able to do much. Opposition to an unjust law. This is one that's interesting. So should you be able to commit a crime if it's like protesting against the law? So some Christians would agree with it, but probably say that as long as no violence is involved, because violence harms others, and that's a bad thing because, you know, sanctity of life, God made all life, so we shouldn't harm others. Violence is wrong. However, if we're standing up and protecting others, that would be considered a good thing. You know, that we are protecting other people and we're loving thy neighbour. If we believe the law is unjust, or specifically if the law goes against someone's religion. If you're in a 12 marker, you could point out sort of in France the hijab ban for Muslims, and you could compare that and go, if Christian symbols were banned, Christian people might feel it's right to display the law. What am I doing? I'm going to bed. Excellent. So those are the reasons for crime. Where a reason for crime might turn up into 12 marker. It could be something like Christians who commit a crime because of their upbringing should always be forgiven, and that could be a 12 marker. It would be very tough, but I think you could do it. The problem is it leaves you very limited on that one because you can't talk about other reasons why they're committing crimes. I'm uncomfortable because I'm hungry. Well, go and make some dinner then. What are you making? Cereal marshmallow squares? You're going to bake something at 6:40 in the morning. You're baking marshmallows at 6:40 in the morning and just looking so depressed. Mate, sort yourself out. This is worse than my actual life. Crikey. I expect these... I hate you. I expect these to come up more in 4 and 5 markers. These are the classic ones I like to do for 4 and 5 markers. So being like, taking one of these words, say greed, and being like, explain 2 contrasting ways Christians should treat someone who's committed a crime because of greed. Or, I don't think they're taking contrasting that one, because I expect they would be like pretty anti-greed the entire time. But that's reasons for crime. In a 2 marker, read it really carefully, because it could say types of crime or reasons for crime. And if it says reasons for crime, it wants like greed and upbringing. And if it says types of crime, it wants like murder and assault or theft or something like that. So just make sure you're reading it really carefully. And the other one that's got a list is types of punishment versus aims of punishment. So the types of punishment you'll need to know for the exam. But I'm just thinking about a dog with a ball, and what's on your table? Well, eat them. How do I do that? Grab a serving. Eat them. Wow, they're my slippers and socks. Excellent. child did a good job picking those. I'm now feeling playful. Of course, I ate marshmallows for breakfast. It's a playful thing to do. So, your types of punishment, the ones you're going to need to know for the exam, are prison, community service, corporal punishment, whipping, hitting, and capital punishment, the death penalty, okay? The aims of punishment you'll have to know are retribution, deterrence, and reformation. You don't need to know protection, but it's useful. You don't need to know vindication, and it was on the exam spec years ago, but I might mention it very briefly now. They're ones you can bring up in a 12 marker, but they won't ever ask you about them in a 4-5 marker. Right, duty calls, the world is a never-ending cesspool of grime and crime. Jesuits, that's dark. And it's time for Mister to take a big bite out of it. Sounds gross. Yes. Care to join them, or should they go to work alone? I'd join them. I don't know what's happening. Okay, so the first aim of crime is retribution. Retribution is when... crime. The first aim... It's very noisy. The first aim of punishment is retribution. Retribution is when you are punishing someone as sort of a direct consequence to make them suffer as they've made people suffer. The best way of me explaining it is eye for an eye. Eye for an eye is the quote that sums up retribution perfectly. So about retribution, you want to cause them harm as they've caused someone harm. Oh, I'm going to work. Oh, excellent. Right. Okay. Is that... Okay. That guy's got face paint on at work as a policeman. And I'm talking to him about a cupboard. Right, well, I hope I have a nice day as a policeman. So, retribution would be stuff like an eye for an eye. That means if they've killed someone, they should be killed. Retribution is most easily linked to capital punishment in my mind, because they take a life and their life should be taken. It's such a simple comparison. Prison and community service and corporal punishment can be used to refer to retribution because you're making them suffer, but the clearest example in terms of a 12 or a 5 marker is capital punishment. If they've taken a life, they deserve to have their life taken. Eye for an eye is obviously the first argument on this one. However, if you want your counter argument or your evaluation, don't forget when Jesus is asked about an eye for an eye, he says, you have heard it be said there's an eye for an eye, but I tell you now to turn the other cheek. That means Jesus is saying that he does not necessarily believe in retribution, but you can link that more into reformation. He believes in forgiveness, not responding to violence with violence. However, you can talk about how retribution makes it just and fair, and that if God is just, or Allah is just, depending on which religion you're talking about at this point, though you're not going to be saying eye for an eye for the Quran necessarily, you can say that if it's just because that person is having done to them what they've done to someone else, and this is why the death penalty should be allowed for the crime of murder. Now, don't forget, if you're talking about retribution, and you're saying the death penalty is correct, you're going to have to be clear in like a 12-mark question for the crime of murder. Retribution doesn't justify the use of the death penalty for crimes such as homosexuality, which are suggested in the Bible. For example, a man who lies a man should be stoned. However, that doesn't fall under retribution because that's not an equal punishment, is it? So you'd have to make that clear, and that could be a piece of evaluation that you drop in there. The death penalty is good because of eye for an eye. However, the Bible says a man who lies a man should be stoned, and this does not feel like it's an eye for an eye. The person has not taken a life, so why should their life be taken? Not a bad piece of evaluation there. Many other Christians now regret... Why is that man walking like that? What's wrong with him? Is he like an alien? Where's my man gone? Where's my man? There he is. He's just playing... What are you doing on the computer? Browsing the web. That's good. What am I meant to be doing? First day on the force. Get a case assignment. Well, we'll have to work that in a minute. The second aim of punishment is deterrence. Deterrence is an aim to put people off doing a crime in the first place. Okay? So, I want a punishment that is so harsh that other people won't commit a crime. So, for example, I would always link that one with corporal punishment. I think that's a really good one to link with corporal punishment or capital punishment. But if get case assignment. There it is. Get case assignment. You do your work. So, I would link that with corporal punishment. I don't want to be whipped because of my crime. I don't want to be whipped because it looks painful and sad, and I don't want that to happen to me. So I will not commit a crime that will get me whipped. Okay? or I don't want to lose a hand, the one I'd always link to that, deterrence, is, assist with a crime scene investigation. You go for it, babes. I would go for the Quran on corporal punishment and deterrence and go cut the hands of thieves. Travel to crime scene. Okay. Where's my police car? The crime scene map can be used to go to the crime scene. I don't know where that is. We'll find that in a minute. So, cut the hands of thieves would be my line, and be like, oh, this suggests that cutting the hands of thieves could be used as a deterrent to stop other people committing the same crime. Oh, there's a map. Travel to crime scene. Excellent. So, I would link deterrence and corporal punishment if I'm doing like a 12 marker or from 5 marker. I think they're the most symbiotic in that relationship. I think that you can help each other. And in the same way, if I had a Strangerville. Welcome to Strangerville. Excellent, thank you. Crime scene. Take crime scene pictures. You go and do your job, mate, and that's fine. Right. Oh, there's a dead body markings there and people all around. So I would always link deterrence and corporal punishment. And I do it both ways round. So if I got a corporal punishment question, I would always try and link it to deterrence as my point in a 12 marker or probably in a 4 or 5 marker. And vice versa, if I had a deterrence question as a 4 or 5 marker or a 12 marker, I'd always try and drop in corporal punishment in there. I think these two are so badly linked. So from a Christian point of view, your weakness of it is you can always go, it's not forgiving, it's not very loving. Many Christians are against this. That's why they're against corporal punishment. Like, they would be my main arguments at that point, okay? They'd be my main points. What is my man doing? If I click him, do I go to him? Yes. What are you doing in the... Have you been using the toilet in the victim's house? And why is someone drawn on the floor? Oh, collect the evidence. Well done, man. I wasn't using the toilet, I was solving crime. So, the third aim of punishment would be retribution. Reformation. Reformation is the idea that you you're sort of reforming the person. You are changing their behaviour. You're making them a better person, so they are less likely to do these crimes ever again. They're not going to commit more crimes. They're becoming a more peaceful and loving person at this point. So, if I reform them, I change them, I reshape them. They were a bad person, I've reformed them into a good person. So that's what it means by reform. You are shaping them. The form they are in is changing. They are reformed. And what are you doing now? Click my man. What are you eating? Applesauce. You're just eating a bowl of applesauce in a murder victim's house. Oh, more evidence. Collect the evidence. Excellent. Well, it's all going to plan. A psychopath. So, Reformation is going to be the easiest one to argue, and I would be linking it all the time to community service and prison. Okay, prison might not seem like the most obvious one for Reformation, but it's somewhere you can go in to change people's behaviour. And you can talk about how, in fact, the purpose of prison is so they have time to reform and change their behaviour, and they can have stuff like rehabilitation in prison. You can talk about the fact that Jesus says, when I was in prison, you came to visit me, and that Jesus always preaches forgiveness, and that he says when he was in prison came to visit me. This suggests to Christians that prisoners aren't beyond help and can be forgiven. Right? That is the point I've been making. And then I would be talking about how Christians believe in salvation, that people can be saved, and prison allows them to be saved. Okay, that they're going to take their punishment and can be saved. What is this white line going? I do not know. Right, what's my man doing now? He's feeling great about life. You just chatting. Oh, there's stuff here. Collect evidence sample. Do that. I'm good at this crime solving. You're just shouting about cars on your own. Do some work. Lunatic. So that's how I'd link Reformation. So just to run that down again, if I get a question about Reformation, I'm always going to link it to prison community service. And if I get a question about prison and community service, I'm going to link it to Reformation. If I get one about deterrence, I'm always going to link it to corporal punishment. And if I get a question about corporal punishment, I'll link it back to deterrence. And retribution, I'm going to always link into capital punishment. I think that's the easiest one to link it to. So, what about protection? Because protection is not officially on there. It doesn't talk about protection being an aim of punishment on the exam board, but it is in reality, and it was on the spec before they sort of adjusted things around. So if I was on a 12 mark and I need another paragraph, especially if it's about prison, I might talk about how prison can be a means of protection. It can be used to protect people from criminals because it will keep them locked away so they are no longer able to commit crimes. And this can be good because now I would link that to the sanctity of life, because then dangerous criminals are not able to harm others, and this protects lives which are sacred to God. Okay. Made a big noise. Oh, collect evidence sample. That'll be... Oh, that's it. I've collected 3 clues now. I'm doing excellent. So those are the aims of punishment, okay? Your aims of punishment. Watch out for a 2-mark question, any of those terms coming up, okay? What are you doing now? Collect evidence sample. Excellent, my friend. Okay, so let's talk about prison in a little bit more detail. Oh, look at him. Actually, no. I want to talk about each of these aims of punishment just briefly more. In a 12-mark question, what are my pros about retribution? Well, my pros are it makes things fair. My pros are that it creates justice. My pros are that dangerous criminals are no longer around. So I don't need to find... Oh, look, there's another dead body there. My God, what happened here? Wasn't there a dead body outside as well? So there was a person who died there and a person who died there. And there and there. What is this game? Like a mass... And there. 5 bodies. Normal. Take crime scene pictures. Take evidence picture. My lord. The person who did this deserves retribution. They deserve to die, according to people who believe in retribution, not myself actually, because they have taken all these lives that God has made sacred. They've broken the thou shalt not kill, so they deserve to die. What's the weakness of retribution? Well, the weakness of retribution, it does not allow for forgiveness, and Jesus was all forgiving. Jesus forgave Dismas on the cross, and this shows that Reformation is more important. Now, then, you're going to talk about Reformation, because that'll be, this is a weak argument because, and talk about Reformation, like, oh, Reformation could be considered more important. Oh, we need to find you more evidence to take photos of. Where's one of those other bodies? There it was. And then take evidence picture. Excellent. Hey, miss, we'd love to have you join Powerhouse. Creepy. Wants me to join a cult. Clearly. Why is Reformation the best aim of punishment? Well, it leads to forgiveness. It makes the world a better place. It means everyone has a second chance. Okay, let's take an evidence picture of that one. I don't know what they're doing. Right. It makes the world a better place. You're following the example of Jesus, who forgave people and gave people a chance to reform. How many times should I forgive? Jesus asked. How many times should I forgive my brother? And Jesus says 7 times 70. Well, that is clearly a comment on Reformation. Get a report from a witness. Who witnessed the crime? Did you witness the crime? Talk about strange report. Take witness report. Ha ha. Excellent. I'm a policeman. My TV's broken. What happened here? Right. So, just binging at me all the time. Return to police station. Return to police station. This game's easy. I like it. Simple, solving crimes all the time. So that's why Reformation is the best. However, what's the weakness of Reformation? Well, you'd be like, Reformation doesn't punish people enough. People may keep committing the crimes again. What if people just keep paused? Just play. Now that you start to gather information, it's time to track down a suspect. Successfully use a chemical analyzer. Not now. In you go, Mr. Minson. You go and get on with your job. So, why is Reformation not good? Well, because people can just keep getting forgiven again and again, and they might not learn from their mistakes. They might keep committing crimes. People who get forgiven for without having to earn it, they might not ever change. So Reformation isn't good, and Reformation doesn't make the world fair because that person has still committed that crime. So why is deterrence the best aim of punishment? Because deterrence is great because it stops other people committing the crime. It may punish one person very harshly, but it means others don't commit the crime, which makes the world a better place. It follows the Bible rule of spare the rod, spoil the child. Mister's workday will come in and out. He should wrap up what he's doing. I don't know what he's doing. He is chatting with Dina. I don't know who Dina is. I don't know. He's chatting to Dina. Good on you. Nice to have a chat with Dina. So, deterrence is great because it stops people committing the crimes and it warns others off and makes the world a safer place. Does that guy have spines coming out? Oh no, it's her hair. I thought she had spines like a stegosaurus. Oh, there's people in prison. See, they are a deterrent for everyone else. They're being punished, so no one else. They should look at those people in that 3 men in that one cell. Why don't they let one of them in these cells? 4 men in those. Okay, we're having mixed cells and just benches. they should look at them there and be like, I won't commit the crime. So it makes the whole society a safer place. However, weakness of this is that it isn't necessarily fair, because people are going to be punished very harshly, and that might be more than how they deserve. Okay, that should be more than they deserve. Now let's talk about these aims of punishment a little bit more. Prison as an aim of punishment. Okay, now if you're doing any bit of writing about prison and you don't use the Bible quote, I was in prison, he came to visit me, you've probably done something wrong. That is the most simple and successful quote to use in these situations. I was in prison, he came to visit me. That is Jesus talking in the parable of the sheep and the goats. Why is that an important quote? Because that quote is saying Jesus doesn't give up on people, but it's also him specific. Oh, I earned 104. I did an adequate job. It's the best review I've ever had in my whole career. Adding a little more shine to the badge and pep in the step might help. Rude. 144 Sus. Excellent. I love my Sir. So, prison is a good punishment for most Christians because it follows the example from Jesus. Jesus is saying that there is a purpose to it. Play. Right. Okay. You have a nice day. You go and play with your cat or whatever it is. I don't know if you have a cat. You just have a cat thing. You just go and live your life. So, that's why prison can be good. Like, use that quote straight away. It's taking away someone's liberty. It is making them focus on their on what they have done, making them understand what they have done. So, most Christians believe that prisoners should be treated well because they are still God's creature. They're still God's creation. They were created in the image of God, even if they committed that sin. Jesus says, when I was in prison, he came to visit me, and they should be treated with love still, and they can be reformed and fixed. Examples of that are the Prison Fellowship, which is a Christian organisation who... Shush. Oh, what's that? Sweet allure kit. I'm alright, thanks. Oh, button I press for that. Okay, this game is very confusing. What one was that? There's one down here. No, I don't know. I'm so clumsy. Oh, have they got a swimming pool next door? Can I go in their swimming pool? Oh. No. I want to go in their pool. Horrible noise. Anywho. Like, prison can also be... the Prison Fellowship visit prisoners, they write letters to them, they help them organise birthday presents. Why? Love thy neighbour. Why? When I was in prison, you came to visit me. Why? Treat other people as you wish to be treated. You would want to be treated well. If you're a prisoner, you'd want other people to be treated. Forgive 70 times 7. Prisoners got so many positives. If I was in a 12 marker and I had to argue what form of punishment was best, odd question, but if it's like prison is the best form of punishment for all religious believers, I might argue prison is the best form of punishment. It's got all those reasons for it about forgiveness that I'd say it's a better form of punishment from a religious point of view than capital punishment, because you are leaving that judgment up to God. You are holding them in prison to make sure other people are safe so they can repent for their crimes and find forgiveness, but you're not killing them because killing people is a sin. You're allowing God to make that judgment. By holding them in prison, you're allowing that decision to be made by God still. You're letting God enact that justice. So I would say prison is a good form of punishment for those reasons. Those are things I'd be saying. Now, corporal punishment. So I'm just going to have some more water. I love water. It's so watery. Corporal punishment is inflicting pain in order to change a person's behaviour or to act as a deterrent to others. It's illegal in the UK and many other countries. Considered a breach of human rights. In a 12 marker, you can obviously mention that. And that's not a religious argument. That's just a factual argument and like a non-religious argument, because they're not religious rules there. Most Christians are nowadays against corporal punishment, because they're like the idea that it is humane and it harms others. However, some Christians do believe in, say, spanking their children, because they go back for the Bible rule, spare the rod, spoil the child. Or there is a Bible quote which is, a rod for the back of the fool. Right, when are we going to work again? 13 hours. Oh, blimey. Okay, you're going for a shower? Turn around, camera. How rude. So we'll speed that up. So a rod for the back of a fool suggests that a foolish person's behaviour can be improved with a rod. If you hit the fool, then he might not be foolish anymore. Which does seem a little bit harsh, because I know many fools. I've been called that myself. I don't want to be hit with a rod. So I'd say, even though most Christians are against it, there are some who use those as arguments in favour of it. Most don't do it because it harms one of God's creations and it's considered harsh and doesn't lead to forgiveness or reformation. So if you're arguing against corporal punishment, always argue for that for Christians. Now, however, you're going to go once again, Muslims in favour, cut the hands from thieves. Now, are most Muslims in favour? Really, like in this country, certainly. There are places where it's much more common. Like, that's a much too broad a statement. But in purpose of the exam, yeah, just say most Muslims are in favour of corporal punishment because of the Quran quote, cut the hands off thieves. This is said to be a good punishment for thieves because it's a deterrent to others and it means the thief won't be able to commit the crime again. However, a weakness of this argument is it does not lead to forgiveness and can ruin that person's life, can be seen overly cruel. Right, are you still eating just marshmallow squares? You have got my diet. That is how I live my life. This person is creepily like me. So that's corporal punishment. If I was doing a 12 marker and I talk about corporal punishment, I'm going to be saying it's a weak argument every single time. I think there's only weak things to say about corporal punishment, really. It's not particularly popular. It goes against forgiveness. There's only a couple of quotes in favour of it. It's not as versatile as prison, which can be a deterrent if the prison sentence is long enough, but also gives a chance to forgive. It can ruin people's lives. I'm going to argue corporal punishment is a weak argument. Jesus says he doesn't believe in an eye for an eye. Oh, my man really needs the toilet. Really has to pee. Lovely. Delightful. Right, I'm going to face the wall so we don't have to watch that situation go down. Community service. Now, community service is a nice one in terms of Christianity. Christians are going to be generally in favour of community service. I think there's a few nice simple quotes about it. I think you can do love that community. Sorry, I should explain what community service is, just in case people's brains have left out. Community service is when we do acts of work towards a local community as a response, as a form of punishment in order to improve our community. Why do we do that? Why is that a good thing? Well, I think there's a few good reasons. I think firstly we've got love thy neighbour. I think we've got love thy neighbour. We're loving our neighbour. We're doing a good action for those people around us, and that is making the world a better place. Now, you could be really cheeky with this one. You could link community service to stewardship and saying it is a good form of punishment because it also improves the world and people can pick litter and actions that improve the world, and that means that it's a form of stewardship as well. You could go faith without action is dead. It shows that by doing an action that they're actually making the world a better place, and faith without action is dead. They are showing they are truly sorry by performing actions. You could also say, what was the last point I was going to make there? Oh yeah, salvation through deeds. Okay, Christians believe there are different ways to form salvation, and one of them is salvation through deeds or through works, and that for some Christians they must do good deeds to be forgiven by God. And you could say that community service is a way of them earning that forgiveness by doing good deeds. It can be a form of salvation through works. Right, what are you doing now? You're just stood around. Whoa, spinny. Why do you eat another? What's up with you? You need social. That's not very much like me. I'd love to be left alone. You're just going to eat more marshmallows. Okay, excellent. If I'm doing a 12 marker about community service, I'm probably not going to have the strongest arguments for it. I'm going to have strong arguments for prison because I'm going to be like, it's not harsh enough punishment, and prison can be a harsh punishment but also allow that person to be forgiven. But I think there's quite a lot of good things to say about community service. The one thing I'm always going to come back to is a weakness of this argument. If I'm doing that sort of evaluation on a 12 marker, I'm going to say, however, a weakness of this argument is that community service doesn't allow, could be considered harsh enough, and for serious crimes is not an appropriate punishment. The good thing about prison is it can be considered a serious enough punishment for someone who's done a very serious crime, but a good punishment as a deterrent for someone who's done a minor crime, so it can cover a whole range of crimes, which is why I think prison for a 12 marker is the one you want to argue for. Personally, I think that's the easiest one. Did I write anything else in my notebook about this? No, I don't think I've got that. Right. And then where did my patron capital punishment go? Yeah, the death penalty. Okay. So, capital punishment or the death penalty, whichever you want to call it, is the act of executing someone to taking their life as a punishment for a crime they've committed. What are your pros because of this? Well, let's go non-religious first. Pros is it's justice because that person has taken life, so that person shouldn't have their life anymore. It makes things equal. That person was dangerous and they're no longer around. You consider it a form of protection. It can be a deterrent because if you see someone dying for that crime, you would not want to commit that similar crime yourself because you'd be like, well, I don't want to die for it. So that can all be on there, okay? So you can talk about it being retribution. You can talk about it being a deterrent. You can talk about it being protection. Capital punishment has got that. Oh, I've got duty calls. Okay. Oh, it says the same thing. Join. Let's go to work again. And then you've got the Christian arguments in favour as well, okay? So the Christian arguments in favour, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. The Bible clearly says that the death penalty is right. Training day 2, train harder. There's still a lot more to learn. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Go on patrol. Here, chat here. Shout, play in the rain. Go on patrol. Click on you. Don't know how to go on patrol. The crime map. Where was the crime map? There. Go on patrol. I'm really good at being a policeman. Right. I'm maybe the best policeman in town. Probably. Already. So, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Like, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Like, this is the idea. They get to know... Right. I don't know. Just issue a citation. Oh, I've got to find someone doing a crime first. Right, well, we'll wait for a crime to happen. Maybe someone will be parking. We'll keep an eye on. Can I give you a citation? No. Okay. So, it protects society by removing the worst criminals. You can use that sanctity of life. Oh! Those men are fighting. Stop fighting. Stop. Stop fighting. Oh. How do I stop them fighting? Issue citation. Stop this. So, this citation would be a fine. That's not really one of our punishments. It should act as a deterrent, stopping them doing that crime again. And what about you? Issue you a citation. Stop fighting in the street, you odd bods. Right. Wackaroo, how dare you? I should issue a citation for that. Why does that make me sad? I don't know. Right. Well, that's cool. We'll just wait here. Well done, Mr. Minton. Other arguments in favour of the death penalty from Islam, it's an acceptable form of death. There are crimes written in the Quran that say you can be killed for, including homosexuality and adultery. So this is a way of keeping society functioning properly by having it as a strong deterrent. However, what are arguments against the death penalty? Well, from a non-religious point of view, people who are innocent can get killed if they're not tried correctly, if we don't have the right information on them. It can be seen as overly harsh because who has the right to take life? We don't need to do this anymore when prisons are so secure. So maybe people should just be put in prison instead. It is a terrible example for a society, you can argue, that killing people is a bad example because then other people think that killing is okay. What about religious arguments against it? Well, for both religions, Christianity and Islam, you can be like, it is wrong to kill. All life is sacred and a gift from God, so we should not take it unless we absolutely have to. And we don't have to take these lives because we can just leave that up to God and put this person in prison. It doesn't have to be our choice. The Quran says, he who kills one is if they've killed all of mankind. That's a really nice, easy quote for that one. The Bible says, thou shalt not kill. That is fairly easy. Okay. Then you could talk about, like, we're creating God's image. If we're creating God's image, every human life is sacred. The sanctity of life, we use that one. Turn the other cheek, okay? Turn the cheek. And then my favourite one for this, Jesus stopped an execution. I think that's a fairly massive point, okay? Jesus comes across an execution, and where's my man? What's he doing? Oh, he's just talking to people. That's fine. You just have a chat, darling. Jesus comes across an execution, and he stops it happening. Like, he ends the execution. And he says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Now, that's a fairly bold statement from him. Unless you are perfect, you should not be killing people. Right, am I meant to... Oh, return to the police station. Go to police station. Perfect. I issued 2 citations for fighting in the streets. I should have probably arrested those men. I don't know how to. So, excellent. Anyway. He stops an execution, okay? Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Like, that is fairly bold. Jesus stops an execution, and that is, like, you proceed the police to issue an all points bulletin. Right, okay, I'll work that in a second. Like, it is an important thing that Jesus stops an execution, and that is a big argument in your exam. If I'm coming down to capital punishment as the best form of punishment, that's a thing that I'm going to be saying, that Jesus stops the execution, that Jesus clearly doesn't want this woman to be executed. That's important because Jesus is come to earth to deliver a message, and that message is clearly important for Christians. So him stopping execution is an important piece of Christians should follow that advice, and that goes with love thy neighbour and all those things as well, that all life is sacred. So that's where I'd come down to it. A 12 marker, if the 12 marker was like the death penalty is wrong or right, I think you can argue either side of it pretty successfully. I'm probably going to argue that it's wrong and be like, prison is the superior form of punishment because it can be used to punish all forms of crime. It depends on the wording of the question. If it was like the death penalty is the best form of punishment, I'm going to argue it's massively wrong and be like, no, the death penalty is only acceptable for certain crimes, serious crimes such as murder, and use eye for an eye as my justification for that, and therefore these other forms of punishment are superior because they can be used for a wider range of crimes. And then my evaluation would be like, though the death penalty may be appropriate for certain crimes, it cannot be the most important form of punishment because it's not appropriate for all forms of crime. However, if the 12 marker was just the death penalty is the best form of punishment for murder, then I might come down and say the death penalty is the correct answer for that one. Even though I personally don't believe that myself, I'm a million of miles away from that point of view personally, I think it's an easy argument to make from a purely Christian and Muslim point of view because you have got an eye for an eye, you have got the fact that it's used as a form of punishment. But I still think there's a lot of evidence to say it isn't. And even then, I might come down to the fact that Jesus stops it being the most important argument. I think that's such a strong paragraph. It's a nice one to finish on. So on that 12 marker, I might just finish on the fact saying Jesus stops an execution. That is a pretty massive point. I would probably do my eye for an eye paragraph, I would be undermining immediately with the turn the other cheek. So no matter what, I'm probably going to end up arguing that death penalty is wrong. But I wouldn't hate it in that question where you're arguing about murder. Other topics that can come up in this section. I've lost my man again, haven't I? Click. He's uncomfortable because he's wet. Well, that's your fault. And you're chatting with Kaylin. Alright, you have a chat with Kaylin. Oh, there's a shower there. Go take a shower so you're not wet anymore. That's going to make him wetter. He's hungry. Where would I find food in the police station? I mean, I don't want to be stereotypical, but are there donuts somewhere? There's stairs there. How do I go up the stairs? How do I go upstairs? Up. Microwave? No. Buy snack. Buy pastry. Excellent. So, forgiveness can come up as its own independent topic. What? More water. I love water. Forgiveness can come up as its own separate category, and that's so easy. There's so much to say about forgiveness. Forgive and you'll be forgiven. Judge and you'll be judged. Forgive 70 times 7. Jesus said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they're doing. Jesus forgave Dismas when he's on the cross. Everything is about forgiveness. We can all find forgiveness through God because of salvation. So I'll be talking so much about how how forgiveness is so super important. That would be my first points I'll be making. They'll be my main aims, and I'll be saying how forgiveness should be the main aim of punishment with stuff like Reformation and community service. That would be massively important. From the Quran, pardon each other's faults. Pardon each other's faults. You should be forgiving each other, okay? So that's a nice simple quote. The full quote is, pardon each other's faults and God will grant you honour. I think, I double check that one, but I would just be using that first part of it. Pardon each other's faults. That is what the Quran teaches you, okay? And Allah is most forgiving and merciful. Another quote there, Allah is most forgiving and merciful. So if Allah is most forgiving and merciful, then we should be forgiving and merciful to each other, okay? So I'll be arguing that forgiveness is the most important thing. There's a special place for those who can forgive. It is perfect, okay? We should be aiming to get forgiveness from God by forgiving each other. If God is able to forgive us, we should forgive each other. That is going to be my argument for forgiveness every single time. If there's a 12 marker about forgiving each other, always argue that forgiving each other is the most important thing. There is so much about forgiveness. Your downsides of forgiveness are like, oh, some people don't deserve to be forgiven for what they've done. It is so bad it goes against this and this, capital punishment, eye for an eye, stuff like that. But there's so much more evidence that forgiveness is the most important thing. I would be finishing everything about being forgiveness the most important thing. What are you moaning about now? Cole, you microwaved your food. I didn't make you do that. You had a pastry, just eat the pastry. Eating too many quick meals and desserts. Yeah. Okay, that's my real life. I'll accept that one. I think that's enough about forgiveness. Talked about death penalty. Okay, let's just go through some quotes now. So I've done a list of quotes, okay? Causes of crime. So I went through the list of quotes to find good ones for that, okay? Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. Now that quote means the like, you have to listen to the law. Like, that's a simple one. Why should we follow the law? Let everyone be governed. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. It's a very specific quote, hard one to learn. I'd only put that one into my mind if I knew I had my other quotes sorted. But that's just why we should be obeying, like, not committing crimes at all in the first place. Okay, I thought it was just a nice big general one that we do, but it is a difficult one to learn. So, obviously, if I was in prison, you made to visit me. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Now, don't forget, Jesus talks about eye for an eye and says turn the other cheek. There is another famous response to an eye for an eye, which is an eye for an eye makes the world blind. That isn't in the Bible. That's Gandhi. Now, it's fine to use that, but you have to say it's Gandhi, and you have to know what religion Gandhi is, and that's Hinduism. And we don't do much about Hinduism. And unless you've researched like a Hisma and sort of like the Cycle of Samsara and Karma and stuff like that, and you're confident on it, I wouldn't risk a paragraph on that. However, if you knew that quote and you wanted to drop it in and you were struggling on a question and you just wanted something about, like, something anti-eye for an eye, and you'd said all the other eye for an eye stuff you had already, or you're getting into a conclusion, well, in like an evaluation or a conclusion, you could use that in there. Because your evaluation isn't going to be massive, your conclusion isn't going to be like a full paragraph. So if you're concluding that, like, eye for an eye is wrong, and you need something in your conclusion you hadn't used before, being like, and more evidence to support this is, in the Hindu religion, Gandhi, a famous Hindu, Gandhi, said, an eye for an eye leads the whole world blind, makes the whole world blind, sorry. This suggests that an eye for an eye is not the correct path. I mean, as long as you're using it just as a small example for evaluation, I don't hate that at all, using Gandhi for that one. But once again, only do that if you're confident. Don't do that as like your first port of call. First port of call, do turn the other cheek, because that's one you can write a full paragraph about. Okay, that's much easier. We know more about Jesus. I've said already, he who spares the rod hates their children. Okay, spare the rod, spoil the child. He who spares the rod hates his children, but I prefer spare the rod, spoil the child as a simple version of that one. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Cut the hands of thieves. I've gone through those ones already. What else have I written down? From the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. I thought that was quite a good one if you're struggling on forgiveness. You may have already learnt that quote for the Christian exam for the Lord's Prayer. So use it in this one as well. Say it, but make sure you say it's part of the Lord's Prayer. It is in the Bible. It's in the book of Matthew, I think, the Lord's Prayer. I really want to double check that. I'm going to... Don't get that wrong. If you get that wrong after this many years of teaching, that is so shameful. Where is the Lord's Prayer in the Bible? It's in the book of Matthew. Phew. Ah, it's so clever. Right, so say it's in the book of Matthew, but no, you don't have to say book of Matthew. It's in the Bible. But if you can say it's the Lord's Prayer, it just sounds better. What are you doing? You're just chatting on the computer. You're at work. Oh, issue an all points bulletin. And why is that flashing? Oh, we're about to finish work. Oh. We've done no work today. Why are you uncomfortable? You need the toilet. That's your business, mate. Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? 7 times? No, I tell you to forgive them 70 times 7 times. Okay, 70 times 7. If you go forgive 70 times 7, you'll get in the marks. But that's the full quote. But I think that's a really useful one. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. That he's that sin cast the first stone. Sanctity of life. Yep, I think I've covered all the major things in that. I've not been a very good policeman in the end, it turns out. I started off as quite a good policeman. I'm just basically playing on the computer all day. But that's fine. Those are the main things that's going to come from Theme E. I can't think of anything else major that's going to come up. The main tip I've got is just be really careful with reading the questions, okay? Especially the 1 markers and 2 markers. I know it sounds strange to focus on those ones, but they're the ones I think the language is going to trick you out most. And don't forget, on the questions that 4 and 5 marker, if it mentions something like greed or addiction, you must mention that in the question, in the answer. So if the question is, explain 2 ways... Oh, that woman just giggling, go away. Right, let's go and look at the prisoners. They won't be giggling. You're not giggling, because this is a deterrent, scaring you to not commit crimes again. I made 27s. You did a terrible job today. Yeah, I'll admit that. I just played on the computer as far as I can remember. So, if there's a 4-mark question and the idea is, for 4 marks, explain 2 ways a Christian might treat someone who has committed a crime because of addiction, you've got to mention the word addiction in the answer for both paragraphs, okay? One way they might treat someone with addiction is they might offer them help rather than punishment, because another way is they might treat them harshly, because they might treat someone who's addicted harshly because they should not have been taking those substances in the first place, as they influence the mind and make you make poor decisions. Link it directly to that. You can't just go, they should forgive because the Bible says to be all forgiving. That will not get you the marks. You've got to link it directly to that word. If it says greed, it must be specifically about greed and clearly about greed. Okay, I think those are all the tips I've got for you today. Clearly my man is the best policeman in the world. I'll try and do one of these for Theme D as well, if I can get it done. I don't know if my sim can go and become an army man. We'll have to see. Have a lovely rest of your week. If you want anything, ask me in class.